There are 72 smartish cookies who've all made quite a lot of money in business and who are stupid enough to get into football. Yet between all of us, we're allowing the National League, the Premier League, the EFL, allowing this status quo of stuck-in-the-mud behaviour. It's got to change. I think I'm doing a brilliant job on sponsorship, social media, marketing, getting more people through the door, and I'm still a million miles away from getting anywhere close to break-even. I am an unofficial spokesman for the National League because they're not doing it themselves, but it is an unbelievable league with unbelievable teams up and down this country, and they deserve more.
Fascinating.
But before we dive in, if this is your first time on the channel, or if you're a regular viewer, please can you like, subscribe, and hit the bell. It allows us to keep delivering you amazing guests and, of course, create the best content. We thank you so much for your support, and time to get on with the show. Simon, thank you so much for coming in. Welcome to the Business of Sport.
It's a pleasure, and it's absolutely lovely to be here.
Well, look, it's I think there's a perfect place to start here, which is people say that if you want to lose money, go and buy a football club. You know, you're experienced and very successful business person. Why did you want to get into football?
I had this conversation with my dad. I said, Dad, I'm buying this business. It's losing money. And I think I'm going to turn it around. He goes, go on, son. You can do that. You're good at that. And then I said, oh, by the way, it's a football club. He goes, no, don't do that. So he was an accountant. So
there you go.
And he was right. I think there's an element of stupidity. I think there's an element of just because everybody else has done it that way doesn't mean I can't make it right. And I'm struggling, if I'm honest. It is very, very hard to make it make sense.
What do you mean by that?
There is not enough ability to generate revenue. There's not enough money coming down from the Premier League, the EFL, through to the National Leagues. And I think I'm doing a brilliant job on sponsorship, a brilliant job on social media, a brilliant job on marketing the club, getting more people through the door, and I'm still a million miles away from getting anywhere close to break even.
What was the biggest surprise then when you came into that? What was the biggest one where you thought this really needs to improve?
This year, a cup run makes a huge difference. I think if you can get a cup run going, then that might just give you that little bit of sparkle. Now, I expected to lose money over the first couple of years. I also factored in that we'd go on a few cup runs, that we might do something. We have sold a few players, but it's just the pressures now. Just if you start at Wrexham, if you see what Wrexham did 2 or 3 years ago in the National League, that hasn't gone away. The cost of salaries have just gone through the roof. Attracting decent players has gone through the roof. The refereeing is so poor at our standard because if anyone is half decent, they take them out, and the same applies to the playing staff. So everything that you do is just getting more and more expensive.
Why have salaries increased in non-league?
I think it's the Wrexham Notts County effect.
Really,
they started paying more than League Two were paying for players. So attracting the better players in, and players were expecting that. They want more and more money.
But that was an exception, not a rule. The majority of teams in National League football cannot do that. So does that not just regulate the market financially and say, well, with those two removed, the rest cannot do that. And if you want that salary, you're not going to get it.
There's still big clubs in there. Barnet, Forest Green, Oldham. These are, even if we're playing against Torquay, we're playing against Yeovil. Not very long ago, these were playing in the Championship. So they've also got legacy of wages. And if you want to get the best players in your team, you've got to pay the best salaries because, and I think location makes a difference as well. Where we're based, we've got to get people to move from somewhere. And that means that's going to cost them more money to live there.
What is a top salary for in non-league football right now then?
I mean, I'm not paying these salaries, but there was a player last week who was offered £1,800 a week. He's part-time at the minute, so to give up his job, he was offered £1,800 a week and a 50,000 sign-on.
Wow.
In non-league.
So, I mean, in essence, making that a full-time job. which the majority of players in non-league football
85,
don't have.
90,000 a year.
And in comparison then, just for context, can you put that alongside the revenue of top non-league clubs?
I'm hoping we'll break 2 million this year. But I think our cost base will be probably 2.5 to 3.
And
There's a big gap.
And that is owner financed, correct?
And it's owner finance, yeah.
So you have the responsibility to that club.
If I decide, that's it, I'm not writing any more checks, they're bankrupt. And there's 72 of us like that.
Yeah. I mean, look, we're jumping into this way sooner than I was going to, but
it's we might as well.
We might as well. What do you think around the current, I guess, owner financing structure within English football and the dependence of clubs on the resources of their owners and not the business models that these teams have in place to sustain themselves?
Well, if you only get 35,000 quid from the league, that's a lot of money to make up, isn't it? When you think about how much money has been poured into the Premier League, been poured into the EFL, we still, we're arguing about three paces up for the National League, which hopefully they will succeed on because they're making a lot of noise about it. But they should be arguing for more money. More of that money is coming up. More and more players are coming through the National League system now, getting more of the superstars who started late in life. I mean, obviously Jamie Vardy was one of the first ones, but now when I started 2 years ago, there was hardly any commentary about it. Now there's emails and broadcasts every single month of another half a dozen players who have left non-league and gone into the league.
So 35k, that's coming centralised through Panorama National League, or
that's the payment from the Premier League.
Okay. From the Premier League? From
the Premier League. I'm struggling to remember if I actually get anything from the National League.
It was interesting when we had Rick Parry on recently, and he was taking us through the breakdown of the distribution of, well, actually, firstly, the revenue generation when Premier League separated from English Football League. And give or take a few million, I may get these wrong, but it was in and around, I think, the revenue of the Premier League in the first year was 45 million and the EFL was 34 million. Now the EFL is 200 and something million and the Premier League's 3.3 billion. So your gap has gone from 11 million to 3 billion.
Yep.
Yet the distribution of cash from the pyramid hasn't necessarily accelerated anywhere near the same as the gap that's been created. So his argument was continually, focused on better distribution to facilitate better financial situations for those lower league clubs. Is it as simple as that to you, do you think, to improve the system? Is it as basic as saying the Premier League needs to give more money, and if it does, it's much easier for the lower league clubs to sustain?
Yes, it'll be easier, but they'll just spend it on players. So this is the problem. Unless there's a way of managing it, and everybody, they all have to be run like businesses. And if they're run like businesses, it'll be a pretty boring business and nobody will be interested in it. I think the whole jeopardy about it all is what makes it interesting and exciting. Players think this, and fans think this. Buy a striker, and everything will be okay. Spend all your money on a striker, and things will turn out fine. What they don't realise is football is a business, and every day 40 people come into that business. And I don't know how many people work here, but I have 40 people come on my floor every day. Some of them like each other, some of them don't like each other. Someone calls in sick. Someone's having a bad time with their partner. There's so many things go wrong. But on a football pitch, people just think, oh, you just got to score more goals than the others. They don't understand all the psychology and everything else that goes on behind the scenes. And that's the hardest thing to figure out. Because if you could figure that bit out, then all the other bits will fall into place.
Yeah. Because
if you're winning, more people turn up. If you're winning, more sponsors are interested. If you're winning, everyone's smiling around the place. And fundamentally, as a business, that's what it boils down to. Because if you don't win, everyone else has got a tougher job. And when you're not winning, the physio's unhappy. The head of recruitment's unhappy. The person who's doing the events, the bar manager's unhappy. And all those lead into what creates a really successful business.
So let's look at then the existing business alongside that to facilitate what a great club can look like away from the pitch. You said you hope to do 2 million. In a breakdown, what of that 2 million in revenue is commercial?
About 25%.
Okay. And that is across how many different types of sponsors? Is that front of shirt, that's stadium sponsorship?
Yes,
how does that look?
Stadium sponsorship, player sponsorship, advertising, hoardings, advertising revenues. What else do we do? Match sponsors, selling boxes, or,
okay.
Traditional advertising at football matches.
If I want to take a front of shirt sponsorship in non-league football, what does that set me back?
It's a difficult question for me to answer because I feel like I do better than most. I don't want to upset my sponsors.
I understand completely. You want to protect the integrity of the deals, but for you to drive great revenue, that's a real positive. And I'd imagine the sponsors understand that they could get cheaper elsewhere, but they're not then getting the value of what Eastbourne's relationship with them is driving. So why do you think some of these commercial partners are happy to spend the money they do with you?
I think it's a story. I've made it very clear from the outset that it's about player welfare, looking after the players during and post-career if they want it. I offer myself up to help them, to have conversations with them. In the first season, they all ignored me. When I asked why, they said, "Look, it's not normal. What you're asking us to do is not normal. It's not normal." Even the manager said, it's unusual for us to have this flexibility, freedom, connection with an owner. It's just sort of unheard of. I'd sort of go in and sit there and sort of make myself available, and they'd just sort of head down and walk past me. And now they come into my office. They don't train on a Wednesday, most Wednesdays, so some will come in and have a coffee and have a chat. And I care about them. I really do want to see them all succeed. I think some of them are capable of playing 2, 3, 4 leagues ahead of where they are now. And we've had some success on that front. And we want to do what we can to ensure the player care, and because I think that's why people want to be associated. That's why players are coming to us when nobody wanted to go to Eastbourne unless they either live near there or they have nowhere else to go. Now they're coming here. People are telling their friends when they leave that this is a good place, this is with good people, and they'll look after you. And I think that's what's made it such an unusual situation in football. And it's very hard in a high performance environment to still add that level of care and trust and kindness and belief and all the other things.
We should probably touch on the club. We have all these great conversations around it. Tell us about Eastbourne. Tell us about the kind of, I guess, from your side, the ideation of the opportunity to then buying it, and why this club has been such an attractive proposition to you, and why you continue to want to go and take it on this journey.
So I looked at a lot of clubs. I went to, I think the most interesting conversation I had was with at Colchester, and he said to me, "What's this itch you're trying to scratch?" And I said, "I don't know. I just feel like I want to do something different, and everybody's doing it the same way, and everybody's going about it the same way." And we had a good old debate, and he said, "Look, you need to understand there's three types of football club owners. You're either going to lose more than you can afford. You're going to lose what you can afford, and you can lose what you feel comfortable losing. And you just got to decide which owner you want to be." So I went around all these different clubs and I had these interesting conversations. And then someone took me to Eastbourne, and I got there, and it was run by a charity, and it was they'd done a really good job of getting it to where they got it to. It was part-time. They were in quite a bit of debt. There was no DNA. There was no, these 7 blokes built this club that literally physically by hand, brick by brick. And there was 11 acres of land, which was quite unusual because every other club I'd been to was sort of stuck in the back of an estate and, no ability to grow or develop. And I just thought, wow, look at this place. I mean, you've got to be able to do something. We can have concerts on the front. We could do some real fun things here. And because there was no DNA, I could write the blueprint of what I wanted the football club to look like and how I wanted to attract people. The challenge was buying a football club off a charity is much more complicated, much more challenging, and you've got to get past the charity commission and everybody else. So it took a lot longer than we thought it might do. I actually took it over 6 months before we actually completed, because if I hadn't done, they would have run out of money and they would have probably had to close down anyway.
So sorry, you were funding the club before you actually owned the club?
Yeah. That's commitment, I think,
Wow.
or stupidity. I'm not quite sure.
I was going to say, it was somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
But
I remember that night thinking, I could write a cheque now and I could be writing cheques for the next 2 months and actually never even own this place.
how was that as a conversation around the dinner table at home?
It was tough, right? And but the family got very supportive, and all the boys are involved both financially and commercially. So what it's done is brought us together as a family. You know, I've got a lot of boys, and they're all involved in one way or another. And I don't think I would see them as often. Now we all see each other on a Saturday and a Tuesday, and we're together all the time. So it's definitely brought us a little bit closer.
What about the FA fit and proper piece?
I keep getting told off for saying things that I shouldn't say, but that was the easiest thing. That was approved in about 20 minutes.
Really?
Yeah. So I don't know how fit or proper. Maybe I am more fit and proper than I give myself credit for.
What did it actually involve?
You just fill in a form and put your name, address, and telephone number, I think.
This is actually, sorry, I didn't mean to trivialise it. It's a really important point because this has been brought in to prevent some of the catastrophes that we've seen in and around English football with owners buying clubs and not being able to finance them longer term, right? Not understanding that there is a continued cost of running a club beyond an acquisition price. So
I think they're asking those questions now because I know Sport England are being much more aggressive with me about information they want. And I'm like, I've been running this for 2 years and you haven't asked me any of those questions previously. And I do not think we went into very much depth at the time of purchasing it. I was reasonably, I was visible online so people could see, and you could see what I'd done and what I achieved. I lived in the UK. I was from the UK. Therefore, I wasn't some oligarch, and I had a business. So I always say people, when you go through the airport and they make you do, I said, do they not teach you any sort of screening? There's certain things you've got to look for. Maybe I just, I looked okay on paper, but I don't think they did ask the right questions, if I'm honest.
So we've already established that there's a 1 million delta between revenue and cost, which falls on your shoulders. What was the cost of acquisition, if you can share, for the upfront commitment for you to be able to take this club on?
Because it was a charity purchase, there was a lot of debt which I had to honour, and some debts which I had to take on and still take on, and then I had to make a commitment to invest a certain amount of money to the Charity Commission, so they felt that the charity was getting full value. So that investment is circa about £2 million. That was what I had to do to get it off the ground. And
what are you getting for that? Do they own the stadium that they play in? Have you got training facilities? Are you borrowing off universities, or how does the infrastructure, I guess, around the club work?
No, I'm quite lucky. I have the stadium. We've got an incredibly long lease on the stadium. We have 11 acres of land, which we can do anything sporting on. So we're introducing paddle and other sports to the club.
Well, that'll make money back.
We'll have the paddle tour and Eastbourne, and all the fixtures and fittings, the lawnmowers and all the other bits and pieces, and a few chairs. I then had to gut the stadium, put new seating in, and then over the next couple of years, I've got to invest, and I want to have a full 15,000-seater stadium there.
Amazing. Really? Okay, so that was a next point, because we touched on the commercial, but as you go higher up the league, obviously there's a huge dependence on media rights. I'm guessing media rights at the league level that you're in are not the key driver of your financial performance. Talk about the value of the experiential, the match day, the fan, versus obviously the exposure and any money that you may get through broadcast. And I'm not talking through football lottery, FA Cup or cup runs. I just mean on a kind of annual basis.
How much money you got in your pocket?
Nothing. I haven't carried change in.
Well, that's what we're talking about.
So media really is zero.
Nothing.
Yeah.
There's a new deal now with DAZN, but I haven't seen the actual financials of it. When I came in at the very first chairman's dinner, I said, look, hello, I'm here. I've got a little bit of experience of doing streaming TV. I have a streaming network in the States. If you want to talk to me, I can help you. And I commercialise it, and I generate tens of millions every single month for it. And they said, oh, that'd be really interesting. Yeah, we'll get someone to reach out to our commercial guy. Then they hire this new commercial guy who they introduced me to. Never heard a dicky bird from him since. The commercial deals that are being done at the minute, are. I mean, finally they've introduced my CEO onto the commercial board, and I'm hoping that will make a difference because he's got a good pedigree of commercial deals.
So the commercial board of the league.
The commercial board of the league. But at the minute, it doesn't generate anything. And if it does generate it, most of it goes to the National League, and we get the dregs. I've heard there are deals coming which will make me smile. So
has the success that you mentioned earlier of, let's say, a Wrexham in non-league football elevated the value of non-league football as a media product?
Yeah, I mean, Wrexham is a little bit of a unicorn in the sense of Ryan Reynolds, because Ryan Reynolds just, whatever Ryan Reynolds turned up to, it would just boom.
But it did shine a light on the quality of football and the appetite, the fan bases, etc., that do exist outside of league football.
We played Torquay last week, and Neil Warnock is now helping Torquay out, and he just said, this is unbelievable football. I don't think people realise how good the football is at this level. And that's why, we've got Premier League and Championship scouts at our games every week looking at our players saying, we can already fast-track some of these players straight in because they've played men's football, they know what they're doing, and they're playing full-time football. When I came in, we said, we're going to treat this like a League Two club. So we have cryotherapy, we have massage therapy, we have sports psychs, we have sports performance coaches. We've got a chef. They get fed, they get watered, they get everything they need from a club perspective. When I look at some of the clubs where they've come from, where they've had to pay for breakfast, had to pay for toast, had to pay for all the bits and pieces, I'm saying, we're treating you like professional Premier, not league players. That's why I think we've attracted some of the talent that we've attracted. I think that's why our social media is the fastest growing in the league, I think.
Yeah, so can we touch on, because I had a look before, I've been having a look obviously in the run up to this, and saw, Instagram at 150,000, let's just say. That's amazing for a non-league football club, right? So how have you actually leveraged the social media platforms that you're on to drive eyeballs towards the club?
It's just created more and more awareness. We're doing a lot of work in the States. I'm doing a lot of work in the States, doing lots of interviews in the States, talking about what I'm doing, and that's where this sort of real life Ted Lasso has come from.
Is that what they call you?
Yeah, and I'm like, but I'm British. But anyway, it doesn't matter. I'll own it. I love the show, so that's fine. And it's just great. And I just think the content we're doing is so on point for TikTok and for Instagram. I think we're growing 2,000-3,000 a week. We're going viral nearly every week. So the content's really good. The manager buys into it, and every time we do a video with him, I think he had one that last week was 10 million, and you just go, this is like other football clubs. Even the big Premier League clubs are looking at us and going, I see them copying some of our stuff.
I was going to say, this is, we have these chats all the time on the show with clubs in much higher leagues, and most of them don't do stuff, right? It's
the hardest thing to crack. And I spent so much money last season doing it professionally, proper, like all this sort of kit, and I had like big agencies doing it, and it wasn't that their stuff was no good. But then Zach came in and he went, no, I'm going to do it slightly differently. Everything is being shot on an iPhone. Even the games and the highlights are shot on an iPhone. And he goes, I'm going to do it much more social media, and you'll see how it works. And I think when he came in, we had 16 or 17,000 on Instagram and 6 or 7 on TikTok. And I think we're 130 and 150 or something. And it's just, everything's organic. He just does everything himself. One kid.
Okay, so it's not even like I can say,
I know
this is a financial outlay that you're committing X amount to that other teams couldn't. You just looked and found a really great way to access opportunity with a slightly creative idea. Because most of the people come and say, "Oh, we can't afford, that's an extra cost. Building a media team is expensive. We're tight on our budgets." Their excuse is the bottom line.
You just got, I'm very lucky. I mean, obviously, he's well trained, well brought up. Is my second son. So, and he just said, "Look, you're doing it wrong." And okay, see what you can do. And he tells me he's underpaid. And I showed him how much Crystal Palace are offering for their head of media. I said, "You're overpaid." But he just gets it. He's been out actually in Riyadh filming with the filming all the boxing, because his stuff is like he just gets social media. I was watching the fight on Saturday night, and I see his little head coming through the ring with his phone, filming the fight. And they said, the content that he produced was the highest grossing stuff they did. So he's incredibly talented, and it's one kid, to be fair. I have another members of the team who do other bits of the media, but he's done this on his own, really, and it's remarkable.
How did the fans then react to this? They must love it, because this is access to their club.
They hated it.
They hated greater output and exposure for their club.
Last year it was like, the players shouldn't be doing all this. They should be training. I said, how much more training can they do? There was, you're clueless. And I challenged them. I said, what's wrong with it? Well, we're not winning. I said, okay, so it's not the social you don't like, just the winning. I said, so if we're winning, it would be okay. Yeah, it'd be okay if we were winning. And now we're winning, and we stopped doing highlights this year, mainly because I just didn't think they were very good, and I wanted to do something properly. And I said, I'm going to pause it for a bit and not do highlights. And then Zach started doing these highlights, which were really funny, and incorporating all these memes inside the highlights. And they were getting sort of hundreds and 200s and 300,000 views on our goals and stuff. And the fans were going, no, we want proper highlights. You can't do that. And so last weekend, I actually put a camera crew in and we did some proper highlights. You should have seen the gratitude and the gratefulness. But I think it's the difference of the age group. Yeah. We've attracted probably 500 more 15 to 20-year-olds, whereas they weren't coming before. But the old guard, they want to see it in the good old-fashioned way, and they don't want things to change.
How many fans do you get in per game?
Get between 1,000 and 2,000, depending on the game.
And accessibility-wise, 15, 20, 25 pounds a ticket?
£15 if you buy in advance, £18 on the day.
Okay, so accessible to hopefully as many people as you can, and I'd imagine you've got great concessions and experience kind of around it as well to build that match day.
On match day, we have a live DJ playing. Obviously I spend a lot of time in the States, so I try to bring all the elements of the, of a fun day. What we're noticing now is fans are really turning up late. They're not coming early, mainly because there's a Premier League game at 12:30, and people sit there and watch it. So we're trying to get more of those into the bar and watch it at the club. Because
capturing that consumer spend earlier, I guess, would be huge for you to be able to drive up those numbers. What about like that 3 p.m. blackout, the protection for the Football League? Is that really important to you that stays in place to ensure that those fans continue to come, or do you believe in the strength of Eastbourne and its following, that actually it doesn't make a difference to the game, but it may make a difference to what goes on around it?
We're on TV tonight. We're on National League TV tonight, and it'll be interesting to see. I actually think we'll have a big crowd tonight, even though we're on TV, because I think the quality of the broadcast it's not like watching a Premier League match. They'll have one camera there. I'm not even sure they'll have commentators. I don't think it'll make a difference. The biggest factors for me are Brighton playing at home, and there's two other slightly lower league teams in Eastbourne who might play at home on the same day. The challenge I've got is Eastbourne is actually quite a fast-growing town. There's actually 125,000 people who live within Eastbourne and the suburbs, which is a big enough audience to be able to attract a hell of a lot more people than we are. But there's a lot of new builds, new towns, and I've just got to do a better job of marketing to them. And I think as we get up and bigger teams come to play us, like we announced yesterday that we got a Man United Legends game next month, and we sold 150 tickets in the first 2 days. I'm like, historically, no one buys tickets until about our ticket price goes up at midnight. Between 10 and 12 is when we sell the most amount of tickets. But they wait to the last minute.
What about the talent? You'd mentioned that catchment area. Where do most of your players come from?
London. We're 25 minutes from Brighton. I've sat down with Tony. I've tried to create some relationships there. The problem they've got is that they've actually got a very limited youth team. They haven't got enough players. So Brighton, yeah. So they can't really help us. And then they've got Worthing the other side. So between us and Worthing, I think they try and help both of us, but there's very little coming out of Brighton. So then we're reliant on, I guess, Crystal Palace, Gillingham, Charlton.
Yeah. And players that don't make the grade through their academies and youth systems coming down.
Or just in their 21s, 23s, and they want them to play some men's football.
Do you have an academy system with the club?
We've got 49 teams. So right the way from 8, we've got 18s, and the problem is between 18s and the first team is too big a gap. So we're looking at can we bridge that for next season. Our women's team are doing really well. They just won my first bit of silverware, and they are playing unbelievable football. Now we're paying women's, the team that they played in the final, we're all paying their subs. And I've got an ex-Chelsea, an ex-Arsenal, proper players, and we're playing the most unbelievable football. And so I've committed to investing in both the men's and the women's divisions. So I'm sticking to that, and we're starting to see the fruits of that come through.
How do you view the strength of the women's game next to the men's team from a business perspective?
Do you know, it's really interesting because when I look at it, I think I sat down at dinner next to the woman who's at the Zone, who's doing the commercials for the women's, I think it's the Women's League.
Yep, WSL.
And they were telling me that Visa was the sponsor or something, and I said, "Oh, what sort of deal?" And not to share numbers, but I went, "What? That it?" She said, "Yeah, a lot of money in it." I went, "No," and I think it all stems from belief, right? Everything, even in the back of the shirts, it says success is driven by belief. I don't think the people running it believe enough in it, because I said to my commercial guy, there's so much more opportunity here for us to find local sponsors to do the women's team. And actually, over the last 2 months, we've had more money coming in through women's sponsors, people who want to sponsor the women's division than we are getting from the men's. So I think it's, are you telling a good enough story? And I, if I was running women's football, I would be able to generate X more millions, because I just think there is so much commitment to support it, and they just don't know how to go and get it and find it.
Do you think the structure is optimized to create success in the women's game?
I mean, you had people like Lewis, hashtag, and they're just saying, we can't afford, we've got some of the best women's teams, but we can't afford to compete. If we go up to the next level, it's going to bankrupt us. So I just think it's very hard for the smaller teams to succeed. And then you've got the sort of, you've got the same challenges with the monopoly of the bigger clubs.
Yeah. I mean, look, again, we've had owners on the past whose women's teams, they have them, they finance them without really any return. And
they just do it because they feel like they should do it.
And they say they feel they have to.
Yeah.
And they are massively in support of having a women's team. They are not in support of the structure because, as you've said, it becomes unsustainable to actually encourage growth. You're happy in your lower league because it manages your cost base and keeps it affordable. But if you go up, it immediately becomes completely inaccessible to the structure of their existing club. So, for me, when you say it actually is generating money, is it... For you, it's actually a really good part of the business, a successful part of the business that you can help drive the overall performance of the company?
Well, the results are successful. We got a trophy, and they'll probably do the treble this year. If we, at the minute, they are unbeaten in the league and haven't conceded a goal. So it probably means our team is slightly better than everybody else's. As we go up, it'll get harder, but every game they've played against teams from leagues above, they're beating them. So I think my commitment when I came was I would like a league team for both our men's and women's. So that's what I'm focused on right now.
Do you have someone managing the women's team separately? I don't mean on the pitch. I mean from a business perspective.
No, same team.
So everything under one roof.
Everything under one.
Same facilities. Do they play at the stadium?
Yeah.
Okay. How important do you think it is that you kind of create that unity between both teams?
What's that thing they say in life? We want parity. Well, you don't really want parity, but you want to be treated fairly. As they go up the leagues, they're going to get pretty much the same. We're giving them many of the same things the men have got. Now, the men obviously generate a lot more revenues than the women generate. We don't charge people to come and watch the women's game, even though it's probably sometimes more exciting, a lot more goals. But
nothing. You don't charge anything.
Not a penny.
Why?
We're just encouraging it because I think at this level, it's I don't think there is an audience for it.
Really, even if you charge £5.
Even if you charge £5, I think people would just. But it's free. They're coming in. They're experiencing live sport. So I think it's good.
Looking at it, like kind of then holistically again. You've come into this. You've taken this on. You've got a love of the game clearly. but it sounds like it's tough, right? And there's no shying away from that. But I'm just coming kind of back to my first piece, which is, with all of this, why? What is the opportunity that you see here? And let's be really positive. It is, with all the challenges, where's that real opportunity for you that you believe you can deliver the best success?
I don't know the answer to that yet. I'm slowly uncovering it. I'm peeling back and finding joy in the pain. I think the opportunity is Eastbourne, where it's positioned. There is no other league. You've got Brighton that way, but there's nothing else that way for a long way. So there's a really nice catchment area. I think there's opportunity to develop the stadium and create much more sporting brands down in Eastbourne. Just give people a sense of Eastbourne, because everyone knows Brighton and they've seen what having a successful football club does to a city or a town. And people walk around. There's lots of Japanese walking around Brighton now in Matoma kits, and there's lots of tourists, and you can't get hotels, and everything's full. There's no short. There's plenty of empty hotel rooms in Eastbourne, and it's like the town that got left behind. You've got Brighton, which is very progressive, Hastings, which is gentrifying, and then there's Eastbourne in the middle, which actually is incredibly beautiful. It's a beautiful part of the world. You've got the South Downs on one side and you've got the sea on the other, and everyone just assumes it's the place where people go to die. And there's a lot of young families move there. I think there's so much opportunity in both property and residential property. You could buy a house by the sea. I was looking on Sunday for 300 grand. Right, you could look out your window and see the sea. Where else in Great Britain can you buy that and be an hour and a half from London? So I just think that they've done a terrible job of marketing themselves. Now, I came in and they said to me, wow, this is what we need. We haven't done any marketing for 10 years, and you obviously know your way around the travel media space. I said, use me. Let me help you. And this is what I find frustrating about the town. It's like they don't want to change. They're sort of, the old guard are stuck in their ways. And I think that every little bit I'm trying to improve it, not just from the football, because if I can bring everything up, all boats rise.
How much of what you want to do, is clipped by the broader regulations, the governance, should we say, of the game, versus what you can actually achieve through your independent strategy at a football club?
This is the way I would answer it, which is that there are 72 smartish cookies who've all made quite a lot of money in business, and who are stupid enough to get into football and plough that hard-earned money into football. Yet between all of us, we can't, we're allowing the National League, the Premier League, the EFL, or allowing them to just allowing the status quo of sort of nothing, of stuck in the mud behaviour. And it's, I keep getting told off that you got to shut up, you can't keep saying this. And I said, why? It's got to change. The game is fundamentally broken. If more people don't stand up and say something, it's not going to change. It's going to be the same in 20 more years' time. And there are incidents that have happened over the last couple of weeks with respect to player care that I've just made my stomach churn, in terms of, how people just turn a blind eye to not looking after some of their players. Then you look at some of the deals that got done. Our ball sponsors have gone, our benchwear sponsors have gone bankrupt. All the clubs have owed benchwear or owed balls, and they can't get them because they've gone bust, because they've made choices to go with people without doing their due diligence on them. And I just think that this is criminal. In any other business, you wouldn't be able to get away with some of the things that you get away with in football.
Why? Why do you think that is the case? How do we get away with it in football?
Because people tolerate it, and they're too scared to open their mouth and actually fight and say, this isn't right.
So now you're in this position. I'm cautious to say a position to influence, because actually, as you said, you're one of many. And without a collective action of some sort, it's very difficult for you to do it. But it kind of brings me back to that question. Like, how do you see an ability to actually do this? Is it just keep shouting and hope someone hears?
Sometimes I feel like I'm shouting into an empty room. How many black and white pictures of footballers, from 2000 to 2025, do I have to see before someone realises that this game is heading in the wrong direction. How many clubs need to go out of business before someone says the model is fundamentally broken? Can a non-league team survive at this level? Yes, if they have a really good cup run, or they sell a couple of players, then they're going to be okay.
Okay, let's jump on that. Sorry, because that's a really important point. That's the football lottery. That's what we call the football lottery.
Yeah.
You can't build a business on the football lottery, right?
Exactly.
So to rely on that is not sustainable. You can't. This industry will not work if you're relying on luck to drive the majority of your business. Okay. Wow. So I mean, okay, if I, let's say I came to you and said, Simon, a non-league club has come in and they've asked us to invest. They've seen an opportunity. They want us to buy it. Is it something you'd encourage? Is it something you'd say, yeah, do you know what? Go and do it.
100%. I think I'm sitting on the most unbelievable asset. Now, I had a long talk with Barry Hearn about this because he said to me, listen, Simon, I had this for 19 years and I didn't make a penny until I sold it. He said, you just got to stay in there, son. Stay in there. You got to absorb them losses and stay in there. But bear in mind of what he's done in sport. He says 4 of my top 10 days are in football, of everything I've ever done. So and I went, I get that, because it grabs you and gets into you. And I do think this is an unbelievable asset. I've got to find partners now who can help me bring it all together. I want to actually turn Eastbourne into the biohacking centre of Great Britain, somewhere where people can rehabilitate, or I can make the players stronger, fitter, faster, quicker, whatever I need to do with them.
You talked quite a lot about this, and it's something we do a lot here, where we try and bring players into the world of investing and kind of giving them a life and career outside of the game and quite often media.
Yeah.
What have you been doing with some of the players to help them, I guess, realise the value that they have away from the pitch? My
favourite story is a guy called Yasser Kasim, who was an Iraqi international who played for me last year. He fell out with some of the management, and he said to me, I said, do me a favour, come and have breakfast with me and we'll have a chat. And he came in and I said, look, I'm going to Torquay on Saturday to watch us play. It's a long train journey. Come with me. We can sit and talk. And he said to me, God, it was like an MBA in business. He goes, I learned more on that train journey than I probably learned anything else. And he's since left and he's created his own podcast. And he and I have been talking about what can we build to give players something. And he's really looking at it from a player, and also he's sort of learning finance and he's learning what he wants to do next. And he said, we want to build something that we can give the players some sort of investment in something or some equity. While they're in Eastbourne, we create a property fund or something that buys up property that they can have some, even if they're making a small contribution into it, at least then, we're showing them how to save, we're showing them how to invest or how to get involved in business. And we're looking at ways we can help players, whatever their business idea is, help them write a business plan, help them put ideas together. So he and I are sitting and we meet up every couple of weeks and have a coffee and talk about this. And he's now working at Crystal Palace and he's doing the podcast and he's doing other stuff. But he's one of the few that took the time to just sit down and talk to me. And he goes,
it's hard though, isn't it? Because it's how much do you balance the players doing it off their own back and having the intuition to be able to realise that this is short term or they need to have a career outside of it, versus whose responsibility actually is it? Anyone's responsibility to help guide them in the right way. And this is really not just non-league, right? We have conversations with Premier League footballers. Look at how many Premier League footballers, top footballers, have fallen, after they've stopped playing. So this is an issue right throughout the game.
They can't even fill a form in Premier League players because everything is done for them. The challenge I get and the pushback I get is, look, we're just interested in the football. Just leave us alone. That's not important to us now. And I keep saying, it will be. And you'll kick yourself that you had access and you had that ability and you didn't take advantage of it.
Do all of your players have jobs outside of?
No.
Yeah, no.
They're all full-time players.
Really?
I think of the top 6 teams in the league at the minute, I think they're all full-time. Okay. Bar Worthing.
What's the balance kind of across age demographics in the squad for you? Do you have some of the experienced pros in there alongside some of the young who help out?
Yeah, I mean, most of our players are sort of 20 to 25. We've got 3 or 4 ex-pros and a couple of, I think I heard someone call them twilight players. So over 30s, but it's a pretty inexperienced squad. a lot of, come out of academies, been released by academies, told they're not good enough. Some have played in the league and just told they're not good enough. I mean, I've never seen a business where 1 week, you're on the starting lineup and next week you're sitting in Rose Ed watching the game from the stand. And it's a game of opinions, and the opinions are just
how do you balance
off the scale.
Well, I mean, but how do you balance decision making based on sporting decisions versus decision making based on business?
I don't really get involved in the football. I have a CEO who runs the business and a manager who, together they make the footballing decisions. They'll come to me with players, and sometimes a very quick Google search, I'll say he's had more clubs than Gary Player. It's probably not, and he's had more contracts ripped up. I don't think he's quite what we're looking for, because I know what we're looking for, and I know, look, I'm very much wanted. I don't want to sound like a breakdown service. I want to take players and help them get them back. So some players that were really good that just have lost their way, I don't want it to be a place where you just come because you think we're paying more money than anybody else. So I'm quite prescriptive in terms of, are they adding to our culture? Are they going to be better for our culture? Are they going to be better for our dressing room? Are they going to make us go faster?
Peter Kenyon said on the show, he said that when Man United were building that team, he said it wasn't necessarily the best players in the world that came in. They had to be the ones that fit the culture, that understood how we played and what it meant to play for Man United. But the key thing about that was obviously they had Alex Ferguson in there. They had a chief executive who sung from the same hymn sheet.
Yeah.
So when you're doing this and you're kind of making those decisions, do you have to be, even if you're not involved on the day-to-day, so closely aligned with the executive and the manager to ensure that this is being replicated, your vision, your ideals are being replicated in the culture of this club?
100%.
How do you do that?
And I'm not doing a very good job of it sometimes, because sometimes players are crying into their beer because they're not getting picked, or they don't like the way they're being shouted at, or they don't like the way they're being talked to. And you've got to understand we're in a different place than we were 20 years ago. And you watch some of the Warnock. You just can't get away with that today. And
what do you think about that?
I think it's hard. I think you do need to be able to tell people honestly what you think without, you don't have to absolutely tear them apart, but people need to understand what they. I think it comes down to the fundamentals: is do they know what's expected of them, and are they able to do that? Because if they're not, then we've got the wrong person. So if they're not able to do what you want them to do, then stop asking them to do it, because you need to help them get better so they can do that. I
mean, to me, look, our culture at the moment doesn't necessarily facilitate the setting of standards because you can't tell people often what you expect because it's perceived in the wrong way. Critique is not taken on anywhere near like it used to be, or at least the hard-nosed approach to things is very different. In sport, it's all about standards. It's all about expectation. It's all about hitting a level that meets the ambitions of an asset, a team, an individual that you're playing with. So do you think we need to not necessarily go back to how we used to be within sport on the professional side, but do you think we need to develop characters that are capable of taking on the criticism, of taking on learnings, rather than just always think that they're the best thing to come in and that the standard they've already hit? There's a saying in the office and in the changing room, which is playing at the speed of trust. And I always say to players, do you trust me enough to tell me you don't trust me? And if we can't have that honesty, and I think that is the problem that I have at the minute, is sometimes the players are scared to be honest because they're scared of being dropped. They're scared of not doing what they need to do because they're scared of not being picked. But that's a bad culture. No? I know. And that's the bit that, but it's a performance culture. But who's responsible for that? This kind of, you recognise this and you're the owner. Yeah, but there's only so far that you can meddle. You can set a standards, and then there's this thing they call winning. And they go, do you want to win, or do you want to have this nice fluffy environment? But does it have to be one or the other? Because apparently so. That's it, because what you're talking about there is the age-old culture of fear versus the challenge culture, right? The essence being, you scare people and they're not going to produce anywhere near as much as if you challenge them.
You look at that Man United team, right? And I loved everything that stood for, and they've stopped doing exactly, you can't win anything with kids. It features in everything I've done. I've started with young kids and I've developed them, and they don't know how good they can be until you show them how good they can be. And that's what I want to do. Sir Alex wasn't a big softie. He'd throw them in. People would leave a change room with stitches in their eye. So you've got to have an element of fear. You've got to have an element of courage. You've got to have an element of all these things. And we've got to pick the people who can handle the good, the bad, and the ugly.
It's finding the balance between being confident in your own voice without the fear of being dropped, right? And also, as you say, being strong enough to go, actually, I need to probably take some of this responsibility on myself.
And I'm giving them that opinion and that time for a voice as well, which I think which they don't normally get.
Yeah.
So I'm aware of the situation. I'm aware that I have this standard, and I think amongst the football, the CEO and I have this debate daily. Look, they're not living like if you interviewed him, he'd say exactly what I said. We've been on interviews 2 days apart, same interview, same crew. We didn't know we were both doing the same interview, and they said, like, we couldn't believe that you two were so aligned, right? And then you've got a management team where it's football, right? And football is different, and they are from a different generation of footballers. And I guarantee that if you went into another changing room in similar leagues, you wouldn't find the same care that we have in ours. But we're not 100%. We're operating at 55, 60%.
It is about football, but any of these businesses, football in particular, it's still about people. Like people, good culture, good understanding and expectation setting, and all of this. The people drive success. So, you can stick.
It takes time.
Of course it does. Of course it does. But, I guess it comes back to just that your now job as you're looking forward and trying to create this culture around the club of aligning yourself, the owner, the executive, and the manager to create a very strong kind of 3-point piece to deliver this from top to bottom and ensure that this messaging, this expectation is met as much as you can.
Steve Coppell's been helping me all the way through this. And I remember the first time he sat down with me, he goes, so what sort of football do you want to play? I said, I want to play really nice football. I'm a Swansea fan. I like the ticky-tacky. And because do you want to win? I went, yeah. He goes, well, fuck that football then. It don't work, right? and he gets it. And I sat and had coffee with him the other week, and he said, sometimes when you're winning, you just got to keep your mouth shut for 5 minutes and just let them keep winning. I go back to my previous point, which is that if you want a football club to be successful, you've got to keep winning. So there's like this horrible balance that you want to have, which is...
No, it's a question we ask every week, and we're still yet to have a good answer.
Nobody else has these conversations, Johnny.
Really?
This is probably the people listening to this and going, wow, he's been a bit flipping honest, isn't he? Even in business, we don't have these conversations where you say, look, he's not good enough, she's not good enough. We've got to get them to somewhere where they can perform at their best.
I mean, look, kind of to wrap it up, going back round, to me, the performance side, as you said, you've kind of got an idea, you've got to create a structure in there, you've got the team in place to then go and do it. Hopefully the performances on the pitch deliver what you want them to. But I still have that massive concern, going back to one of the things we started at the beginning, of this business really is only viable because you are here financing it. And so non-league football in this country, as great an opportunity as it is, as important as it is to all of the communities that these clubs play integral roles in, they are not sustainable if they do not have someone like you there able to help that business operate. £1 million deficit per year at that level is a lot of money. So how do we improve that?
It starts at the top. So it starts at the Premier League. I think they've done a better job of supporting the EFL. They've got to do a better job of supporting the National League.
What does a Premier League support package, if you want, let's say, look like that would actually meaningfully help you?
I think at the minute it's about £3 million.
For the league, for everyone?
72 clubs.
Wow.
With 70% of that going to the National League. So we only get 15% in the north and south. I mean, I think if 20 million was coming in, which is, it's a dribble, absolute dribble, it would change that league completely. And do you know what? We would find so many more superstars. And that's what it's about. There is more talent being discovered in the national leagues and lower. Even step 3 and step 4 and step 5 are finding some superstars. They're actually hurdling us. Like, they're not, normally they'd go step 6, step 5, step 2, and then they get picked off. Now they're going straight from 5, 6, 3 to League 2, League 1 and Championship.
But again, I guess your problem is making sure that any money that is distributed down, that is an increase in what you get, isn't just spent irresponsibly in the same ways that we've seen.
We need some sensible caps put in place. And you have, in my league, you've got Bournemouth. So Bournemouth is a perennial National League team. So they've got a National League budget really in National League South at the minute. And they've brought the best players up. And they've got a squad of, they've got a Ghanaian international playing up front for them. And he's the league's top scorer. Surprise, surprise. So it's not fair. They only get 500 people coming to watch them. I mean, Bournemouth was the first club I reached out to because it's very close to where my home is, and Danny never responded at that time. But I just think he's got an unbelievable facility. He's done a brilliant job. He's got Arsenal ladies playing there, and I think Arsenal under 21s as well. So he's got superb infrastructure, but nobody's coming to watch Bournemouth play. And that's because he hasn't done a good job of marketing, because he's got a big enough catchment area. So I think non-league has work to do as a PR to get more people to watch non-league football. I think non-league football is much better than people realise. It's cheaper. You can have a family day out and you still get to watch live sport. And you can sit, and the thing that I love the most, that gives me the most sort of heartwarming moments, is when the kids stand outside and they're getting the player signatures, and they've got all their posters in them, and they've got all their signatures, and they have access. When I used to take the kids to Arsenal or Brighton, you sat up in the gods, you never see the players, and you spend 2 hours getting out of the stadium and nothing, no interaction. Whereas now they literally can shake the players' hands and they have their pictures and their selfies, and they feel part of it. So we're doing a very big work because I think it's 7 years old is when a kid decides what team they're going to support. So we're in all the schools. We have players going into all the schools as well. So we're driving that community. We're trying to get as many kids coming in to watch the games. And as I said, I am an unofficial spokesman for the National League because they're not doing it themselves, but it is an unbelievable league with unbelievable teams up and down this country, and they deserve more.
No, I think that's a perfect way to wrap it up. It's proper business of sport, this, in an area that, as I said, we haven't really kind of explored and chatted through. So thank you so much for taking us through both, the club side and the whole league side. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing the story.